Hey friends, I'm Scott Hanselman. I'm going to give you a tour of Windows 11. This is the public preview that if you're a Windows Insider, you can go and upgrade to by going into your Windows Insider settings. I upgraded from a regular Windows 10 install on this Surface Book 3, and all I've done is set up my work email, installed my Gmail, and a couple of things, and then I did put on some screen capturing software, so I am running NDI. That's how I'm doing this. So I'm recording on this machine, but the machine that I'm using is this laptop right here. I'm not remote desktoped into this machine, but I'm rather using NDI to capture it. So that's how I'm looking at this video. Okay, so right off the bat, you can see that the taskbar at the bottom here is centered. And what I'm actually going to do to make sure that we can see this is I'm going to run some software here called Zoom It, and that'll allow me to give you a little bit more detail about what's going on. So if I zoom in down here, you can see that the icons are all new and refreshed. The reason that my face is actually on this icon here is because that's a profile. I've pinned a profile there. I've got my work profile and I've got my personal profile for Edge, and that's why that looks like this. I've added a few things. I've pinned To Do, I've pinned Gmail, and I've pinned the Outlook web app, and I'll talk about app pinning a little bit. And then I also went and I downloaded Windows Terminal. Windows Terminal comes out of the box in Windows 11, but I got the preview version of Windows Terminal. You can go and get that yourself if you want in the store. And then I installed Visual Studio, and I installed Visual Studio Code. And then I'm running Zoom It, but I didn't do a lot. This was 20 minutes. I went and just got my Visual Studio, got my dev stuff, and went and did it. Right off the bat, you notice again that this is here in the center. The start menu is in the center. If you don't like that, you can right-click and hit Taskbar Settings, and you can set taskbar behavior and alignment to the left. And now it looks like before, right? It's your start menu, but it's over here on the left, so you can do that. I glossed over the settings. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. But I just want you, if your initial reaction is I'm freaking out, everything's in the center and I don't like that, don't freak out. You know, it's still Windows. I'm going to click on the Start menu and I can click All Apps and it pops up this list and I can scroll around in that list. Or I can click on one of these letters and then pick a letter and then pick what I want, or right click as before and pin that to the Start menu. Live tiles are gone. I have to say that I think that's a bummer. I really like live tiles. I thought they were very unique. But these are the pinned items that I've got right here, and then recommended ones are things that I've done recently. That includes both apps recommended because I recently added it or because I recently opened it. So here it says I'm recommending this because it was recently added, that screen capture tool that I told you about, or this work document and this work PowerPoint that I'm working on. They're in the recommended list because I was just in them like a couple of hours ago. So that's why that's happening. Next to the Start menu button, we've got a search button, and then I'll cover these two in a second. If I click the search button, that will go and search your apps, right, like this. It'll search your folders, and then you can go and say, just show me those, just show me documents, whatever, right? And I can click on documents, and then it'll go and send me to those documents. They can be in your SharePoint, they can be in your OneDrive, they can be local, and you have control over all of these things, which is cool. So I can also just hit the start button, and start typing. So I can type terminal. Now this is an interesting one. See how I brought up command prompt because it's related to terminal? In the future, they're going to go and make, oh, look at that. See, I clicked on command prompt, but it ran the command prompt in the Windows terminal. That's because you can set with a specific version of the Windows terminal, and this will happen in the future, probably later this fall. You can set that as the default. So we'll see the Windows terminal again ship inside of this, and then when you run command, it will show up. Everything's been rounded. We can zoom in on some of these rounded corners here. So you've got a really nice rounded corner there. All the windows are there. You'll occasionally bump into things that are both old and new. So I just hit Windows R, and you'll notice that the run dialog looks old and new at the same time. You've got new rounded buttons, you've got new rounded corners, but it's still the Windows run dialog. I don't know if those things are going to change, but you'll find bits of old and new. Here's an interesting thing. I have to go to a mentorship session soon, so you can see that this popped up and it popped up here. And that when that popped up, that's a whole new look and feel, which is really cool. If I click over here in the Action Center, you'll see pop-ups like that as well. This one has got a notification indicating that screen capture software that I installed. Here's one showing the calendar that I can open and close. Those are really kind of new and modern and really cool. You'll see that the theme here in the background is new, and if I right-click, I can say New Desktop Background, and you'll watch, look at that. That subtle glow as we go from place to place. Those are actually transitions from desktop backgrounds. Now, if I right-click on that, and I think it is personalize, we'll go into the new settings dialog here, and I can pick a different one. We'll pick like Windows Light, and this has only one image. So this is going to switch me from dark mode to light mode, change a bunch of stuff, and then now I'm in light. This one here will change colors. You see how the colors are changing, the dialogues are changing. This is going to switch back to dark mode. And that one has 4 images. Okay, so if I close this and then right click and then say next background. Are those tacos? It's kind of cool. I thought one of them was tacos. I swear that's literally a hard shell taco. We'll see. Cool. Now, when I right click, you can see this new menu, this new right click menu is an all new design, all new icons. It looks really, really cool. You can see open in Windows Terminal appearing right there as well, kind of integrated, which is cool. This is interesting though. I don't know if this is going to be the way things are going to be, but see how it says show more options? What that really means is show me the menu underneath the menu. So this is the menu that I'm used to seeing. If you have things that plug into your menu, third-party items that plug into your menu, they're in that second menu. We'll see what that looks like in the future, but I think that's kind of interesting. Oh, accidentally, I went and opened Visual Studio Code. So there I am opening Visual Studio Code, which actually brings me to window management. I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because I'm going to move this window around on the screen a bit, okay? And I'm going to actually hide myself, and then I'm going to grab this with my finger. That's my finger there. You see this? See these dots? That's my hand, okay? I'm going to pick up this. Notice how it gets a little bit smaller? It kind of like goes, whoop, and then it like has a ghost around it. And I can drag it over just like we've seen before, and I can say, I want to put it here, okay? And then your snap appears on the right, and then I can say, want my to-do over there. That's not new, it's just prettier, okay? But let's say I was going to open up the terminal. So now I've got my to-do, I've got my PowerShell, and I've got my my Visual Studio Code. Now I've got a lot going on. I'm getting overwhelmed. Well, I can hover over this here, this maximize button. Looks like this is not something that's built into Windows Terminal, unless I'm doing it wrong. There it is. That's interesting. See how these squares here and here are squares? But this one here is kind of rounded. I wonder if that means that one of them is a native control and one of them is drawn. But if I hover over this application, you see that pop up. These are called Snap Assist. Check this out. I can say, I want to go over here. And then it says, okay, well, what do you want on the left? Well, I want that over here, right? So then you can do that Snap Assist as you move things around. And I can say, well, now I want to have it be a little bit off to the side. And then maybe I want this one to be over here. I can only assume that that Snap Assist menu will, the intention is for that to appear everywhere. But again, this is the very, very first public preview of this stuff. So it makes sense that these things are kind of not working everywhere. Not 100% right there. Now, if I bring up my terminal, actually, again, and of course, with the terminal, there's all kinds of things that are not specific to Windows, like this, like opening different versions of stuff and running them all over the place. I've got Ubuntu and I've got DOS and I've got PowerShell all kind of hanging out together. I can go and do silly things like this. I might want to set up virtual desktops. This button here, the task view, lets me do that, and I can go and say new desktop. I can name it like work stuff. Name this one home stuff. Okay. And then we can click on task view, of course, and I can pick up the terminal and drag it over there. So now I can four-finger swipe. Four fingers, this is like Mac people can go like 4 fingers, swipe. I'm swiping between the two virtual desktops. And then if I hit Windows Tab, I don't know what that is. If I hit Windows Tab, it pops this up and I've got those available down here. I can move them around, rearrange them. So reinforcement of excitement around the virtual desktops, which is cool. If I open up this PC, we see the new Windows Explorer menus. This is all updated icons. I think they call these fluent icons. These icons are all updated as well. But of course, as you go and look at these menus and then you dig in, if I go up here and I'll click on options, now I'm in like old world. You know, that's not in dark mode and it looks older. Again, very, very first preview. You will bump into places where it's like, huh, that's not new. That should be refreshed. I assume that they'll get to that stuff eventually. But dark mode definitely looks nice. And then, of course, I've got that snap assist like that, which is pretty sweet. Cool. All right. And then this button here, Widgets, is interesting. Slides out from the side here, see? And I've got my calendar from work. I've got traffic, stories, all kinds of stuff. My to-dos, I can go and rearrange these widgets, add new widgets, and search the web as well. So that's all new. Here's my adding of widgets, stocks. I'm not sure why esports is interesting to me, but maybe it's interesting to you, my friends. That's pretty cool. So down here again, reminder, start menu, search, tasks, widgets, and then the stuff that you've pinned. Now, I want to point out like Gmail and Outlook, these are not apps. These are actually PWAs. So if I open up, for example, my podcast, okay, and I want to install this as an app, I can go and say apps, install site as an app, call it podcast, hit install, and now it appears as its own thing. It's its own app. We used to call these site-specific browsers or SSBs. And then I can go down here in the start menu, and you can see that it's now listed as an app called Podcast. You can do this on Windows 10 today. Then I can right-click and I can say Pin to Taskbar. So then now the Hansel Minutes Podcast is an app that pops up and runs as an app. What I've done is I've pinned Gmail and Outlook, which is at office.com, and I've pinned them as apps. I think we'll see a lot more of that stuff, and I understand that there's actually a tool that you can get with Edge. So if you have a PWA, you have a website, you want to turn it into an app and then pin it and blur that line between, you know, apps are apps, right? You can do that, and I've chosen to do that with my own personal Gmail and treat that as an app as well, which is really, really cool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that, and then I'm going to right-click on my podcast, and I'm going to uninstall that app. Yeah, so that here you go. There's another rough edge where, you know, the button looks square instead of looking looking rounded. Those things will get fixed, I'm sure. There we go. Cool. All the other stuff kind of exists as before. One of the things that's nice, if you would like to check it out, is WSL install. So if you've never installed WSL before on your machine, you type WSL install. It will go and set up things for you. Get Windows Subsystem for Linux, download Ubuntu, set up the icons. So then in Windows Terminal, you'll end up nicely with an Ubuntu right there. And then when you run that, Linux runs as you expect. But if I go to the Start menu here and hit All Apps and, you know, click on Ubuntu, you see that there's a group there. When I install a graphical app inside of the Windows Subsystem for Linux, it shows up and I can run it. So here's the GIMP. So there's, you know, the GIMP, basically Photoshop application, and it looks like a Linux app because it is in fact a Linux app. So here, you're going to get the look and feel of a Linux app. And if you really want to live dangerously, I can go and say Ubuntu, and let's open that up, and I'll run Chrome on Ubuntu on Windows 11. So there's Chrome right there, and then we can go and look at the Enhanced Minutes podcast, fast, which is really, really cool. And you notice that those apps appear down here, and the Linux apps, oops, let me close some of these. I want to minimize all this stuff. Minimize, go away. So here you've got the GIMP, you've got Chrome, and you've got Visual Studio. These are Linux, that's Windows. And it's all running really seamlessly. It's really kind of given this machine some fresh life. It's pretty slick. Another major thing that was added is a settings refresh. So if I go to the Start menu and I hit Settings, you can see that this is kind of all new. It's all new, and it's a whole new way of thinking about settings. There is still buried deep inside the machine the original control panel. So if you go searching for control panel, you will get this. You'll get the kind of half Windows XP, half not. Like, I don't know, that looks new, and that looks new, and that looks new. I have mixed feelings about that one, but you won't end up here. You will, if you click the gear, you will end up in the new world. And this is really nice. This is almost like the best part of everything that happened here. It's really, really cohesive. All the basics that you want to do are right here, and they're all searchable. They're also a lot more thoughtfully laid out. So for example, if we go to here to Bluetooth devices, you can see I've got my mice automatically paired. And actually, let me just hit remove and remove to show you an example. I'm just going to grab a mouse and we'll pair it right now. So I'm just going to hold down the Bluetooth button here, and we'll use what's called Swift Pair. So you see how it automatically notices that my mouse is there. This has been in Windows 10 for a while, and I'll just hit connect. So now I'm using this Surface mouse right here. I'll put it down. You'll see it comes up with a default icon for a second here, and then it says connected, and then now the mouse is moving around. And in a second, this is going to change to be a Surface mouse once it figures out what kind of mouse it is. If I click on View More Devices, you can see the other devices on and around the house here, as well as the ones that are connected. That precision mouse shows a battery and everything like that. This is going to be a lot easier for non-technical parent to figure out, in my opinion. I know that it's easier for me. So that's a nice thing. Same thing applies to printers as well. Very, very nice layout for printers. A lot of the networking stuff has been cleaned up as well, including some really nice improvements around things like data usage. So I can go in here and see what we're spending all of our time on the internet are. This is, of course, not just the internet, but any network going out as well. You see here that scan converter, that application I'm using to capture the screen, is high right now because I'm sending it out over the Ethernet. Okay. And another one that I was really impressed with was battery. Let's take a look at the battery here. So we search for battery. Check this out. So your screen is using a lot of battery because I like a high battery, I like a high brightness rather. But look at this. Click on detailed info. This is the kind of stuff that you expect to get on like an iPhone or something. Battery usage per app. Right? Sorting by overall usage, what's in the background, what's using up your battery, how much time it's spent charging, plugged in versus in sleep mode, what was going on when it was in sleep mode. I thought that was really, really cool as well. So check that out. We saw the personalization stuff, colors, accents, all very nicely organized. You notice there's this kind of cohesive go forward and backwards kind of thing going on, which I think is really nice. And then in the lower right-hand corner here, again, haven't quite decided what I feel about this, but this is usually called the tray. It's not technically the tray, but this area here where these buttons have traditionally been individual buttons you click on. These here, it's kind of a button group. I don't know if that'll change or not. If you click on it, it pops out like this. Very fresh new animations I like. And then when you click on these, you navigate within them. You see how there's like go forward, go back. Now, again, everyone's different, and maybe you don't think about these things like I do, but I'm actually looking at exactly how tall this dialog box is. When I hit VPN, it gets like 2 pixels taller, and then it's not acrylic, it's not see-through anymore. I'm sure things like that get looked at as well. Wi-Fi does the same thing, in fact, as well. This one is interesting here. This is the volume control. If you click on it, it kind of it mutes it. It has this kind of very long running animation to mute and unmute. But there's a button to the right of it here. If you click on that, there's where you can manage what's your output for your speakers, which is kind of cool. And then if you click the little edit button here, you can go and add and remove other things to turn off and remove stuff that you don't want. So if you don't want focus assist, and instead you want, you know, nearby sharing or night light instead, you can click on that and move these around. So it's a nice little improvement right here. And then of course, if you right click, you can still open the volume mixer, except for this one is done in that new style. And this is an interesting reminder. This used to be buried in Windows 10, but here you can have individual app volume, right? So you can say, when I run this app, I want it to use this input and that output and the volume to be set individually. So if I go and run an app that uses sound, I could say, I want, you know, Zoom or Teams or whatever to use this input and this output, and those will appear there automatically, which is cool. That was buried down here inside of the old mixer, and now it's inside of the unified start menu, which I think is pretty slick. There's little tiny things that I, you know, as a design-minded developer would like to fix. Again, we're in dark mode. You'll notice just for a split second there, when you run Explorer, there's a split second of white when you're in dark mode. You know, I expect things like that will be fixed. But you know, polish notwithstanding, it's still pretty fabulous. I also want to point out that I have made the icons giant because I like giant icons. So, you know, if you want tiny icons, that's on you, but I like a giant icon myself. I also like a giant cursor. And I do want to take a moment here to just remind you all that you are better people if you get a giant cursor. Not a text cursor. I actually wanted a mouse cursor. Under accessibility, on the mouse cursor, give yourself a nice giant cursor. Make it giant and green. You're a good person for it. Makes life better, trust me. And then those touch indicators there. I click touch indicator to go and make my fingers look a certain way. That's my fingers there. That's because I clicked this and I said make a circle larger and darker. And then those gestures that I've been using are all controlled here through the touchpad, including that forefinger gesture for switching desktops. And it actually shows you how to go and do that. And then if I forefinger up, there's my multitasking view, switching desktops back and forth, all done in that nice, clean, new settings dialog. All right, cool. So I'm digging it. I hope you dig it. For a first beta, it's pretty good. I like it. This is the public Windows 11 preview. I hope you check it out. But again, I would recommend that you put it on a machine you don't care about. I wouldn't use my daily driver for this quite yet. If you have to have your computer work every single day, probably don't do it. My 13-year-old is mad at me because he put Windows 11 on his machine and it's got some little weird things with Call of Duty. But I've got extra machines. If you have an extra machine, absolutely put it on all your extra machines. Test it and check it out. Thank you so much.